I'm sitting in a bank office in Davao City, staring at loan documents that will ruin my life, and the Filipino bank officer across from me is looking at me with an expression I recognize now but couldn't interpret then, pity mixed with resignation. The look you give someone who is about to destroy themselves and won't listen to warnings. "Sir Tom," the officer says carefully, choosing his words with obvious discomfort, "I must tell you that the co-signer on this loan, Miss Clarice Dela Cruz, she has already made withdrawals using documents with your signature. The total amount withdrawn is $150,000. Are you aware of these transactions?" My hands are shaking as I hold the papers. $150,000? I had agreed to co-sign a business loan for $85,000 to help Clarice open a small medical clinic where she could serve her community as a nurse. How could $150,000 have been withdrawn? There must be some mistake, I say, my voice sounding weak even to my own ears. Clarice and I are partners in this clinic. She wouldn't make withdrawals without telling me. Can you check the records again? The officer's expression doesn't change. He's seen this before, I realize. He knows exactly what's happening, and he knows I'm about to discover it too. "Sir, the withdrawals were made over the past 2 weeks using power of attorney documents signed by you. The signature matches your identification. Did you sign documents giving Miss Dela Cruz power of attorney over this loan account?" I'm trying to remember. Clarice had brought me several documents to sign related to the clinic business registration papers, lease agreements, bank account authorizations. She had explained each one carefully, though many were in Tagalog and I had to rely on her translations. Had one of those documents been a power of attorney? I honestly couldn't remember. There had been so many papers, and I had trusted Clarice completely. I may have, I admit, but only for business purposes related to the clinic. She's managing the daily operations while I provide the capital. That's our partnership structure. The officer nods slowly, and I can see he's deciding how much to tell me. "Sir Tom, I must be honest with you. We see many cases like this, foreign nationals who co-sign loans or provide financial support for business ventures with Filipino partners, and then the partner withdraws the funds and disappears. I am not saying this is happening to you, but I would strongly recommend you verify that the clinic exists and that Miss Dela Cruz is using the funds as promised before you sign these additional loan documents." His words hit me like a physical blow. He's suggesting that Clarice might be scamming me. The woman I've been in a relationship with for 9 months. The woman I've already sent $150,000 to help with her education and her family's debts. The woman who calls me my love and talks about our future together. He's suggesting she might be stealing from me. "I appreciate your concern," I say stiffly, feeling defensive. "But Clarice and I have a genuine relationship. She's not like the women you're describing. She's educated, from a good family, studying to be a nurse. She's not some bar girl trying to scam foreigners." The officer raises his hands in a gesture of surrender. "Of course, sir. I am sure you know your situation better than I do. I am simply required to ensure you understand the loan terms and the risks involved. If you would like to proceed with signing, I can process the documents now." I should have walked out of that bank. I should have taken the officer's warning seriously and investigated before signing anything more. But I was too proud to admit I might have been deceived. Too invested in believing Clarice loved me, and too desperate to prove that my relationship was different from all the other failed relationships between older Western men and younger Filipino women. I signed the documents, and with that signature, I sealed my financial destruction. My name is Thomas Reynolds. Everyone calls me Tom. I'm 66 years old, and over 9 months in the Philippines, I went from being a comfortable millionaire to being $250,000 in debt, with my U.S. bank accounts drained and my retirement destroyed. And the woman responsible, Clarice Dela Cruz, disappeared completely, leaving behind nothing except forged documents and a 26-year-old's performance of love so convincing that I believed every word until it was far too late. If you've been enjoying the stories I create, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Your support is crucial for the growth of this channel and helps me dedicate time to making these videos despite my commitment to a full-time job. Thank you for being here. I need to explain who I was before Clarice, because understanding that helps explain how someone like me, successful, practical, not particularly naive, could lose everything to a 26-year-old woman who was playing a role from the first message she sent me. I was born in Tampa, Florida in 1958. grew up in a working-class neighborhood where men worked hard and didn't complain about it. My father drove trucks, and I learned early that if you wanted anything in life, you had to work for it because nobody was giving you handouts. I started working in logistics when I was 19, loading trucks, managing warehouses, learning the business from the ground up. I was good at it too. I understood how to move products efficiently, how to coordinate shipments, how to build relationships with drivers and clients. By my late 20s, I was managing operations for a mid-sized logistics company in Tampa. In 1990, at age 32, I started Reynolds Logistics with money I'd saved and a small business loan. The company specialized in warehousing and distribution for mid-sized manufacturers who needed reliable logistics partners but couldn't afford to build their own distribution networks. The timing was good, Florida's economy was growing, and companies needed partners like me who could handle their logistics professionally without the overhead of hiring their own staff. Reynolds Logistics grew steadily over 25 years. I never got rich quick, but I built a profitable business that employed 38 people at its peak and generated about $2 million in annual revenue. I was proud of what I'd built, a real company that provided good jobs and served clients well. My personal life was less successful. I married my first wife, Karen, when I was 28. We had 2 kids, Brandon in 1988 and Ashley in 1991, but the marriage was rocky from the beginning. Karen resented the hours I worked building the business, and I resented her constant complaints about money, even though I was working myself to exhaustion, providing for the family. We divorced in 1998 after 10 years of increasing hostility. My second marriage was to Linda, a woman I met through friends in 2002. That marriage lasted 7 years and ended in 2009 after she had an affair with someone from her office. The divorce was expensive and bitter, and it left me feeling like a complete failure at relationships despite my professional success. After the second divorce, I focused entirely on building Reynolds Logistics. I dated occasionally but never seriously. I was burned out on relationships, convinced that marriage was just a legal arrangement for transferring money from men to women who eventually got bored and left. By 2019, at age 61, I was tired. Tired of managing employees, tired of dealing with client demands, tired of the constant stress of running a business. When I received an acquisition offer from a larger logistics company, I seriously considered it for the first time. The offer was $1,200,000 for Reynolds Logistics. After taxes, legal fees, and settling debts, I'd have approximately $900,000, enough to retire comfortably if I was careful with my spending. I accepted the offer and retired in early 2020. I was 61 years old with $900,000 and no clear idea what to do with the rest of my life. My relationship with my adult children was distant. They were closer to their mothers and saw me as someone who had prioritized work over family. I had a few friends from the business world, but those relationships were superficial. I spent the first year of retirement in Tampa, and it was miserable. My days were empty mornings at the gym, afternoons watching television or reading, evenings alone in my condo. I had worked for 40 years building toward retirement, and now that I'd achieved it, I discovered it was just an extended period of loneliness with nothing meaningful to fill the time. In 2021, I started researching retirement abroad. The cost of living in Florida was high and getting worse, and I was lonely in ways that were becoming unbearable. I wanted a fresh start somewhere warm and affordable, somewhere I could stretch my retirement savings and maybe, possibly, find some companionship that would make my remaining years bearable. The Philippines appeared repeatedly in my research. The country had a large expatriate community. English was widely spoken. The cost of living was remarkably low, and Filipino culture reportedly valued older people rather than dismissing them as irrelevant. The online content was seductive expatriates posting about comfortable lives on modest budgets, warm weather, friendly people, and yes, the possibility of finding relationships with Filipina women who valued character and stability over youth and flashy wealth. I was skeptical about the relationship angle initially. The stereotype of the older foreign man with a much younger Filipina girlfriend seemed exploitative and sad. But the more I read, the more I encountered stories of men who claimed to have found genuine love with Filipina women relationships based on mutual respect and shared values, rather than just financial transactions. I wondered if maybe I could find something similar. Not necessarily a young girlfriend, but companionship, someone who might value the stability and kindness I could offer, rather than seeing me as a washed-up 60-something with 2 failed marriages. In November 2021, I made the decision to move to the Philippines permanently. I sold my Tampa condo, consolidated my investments, and booked a flight to Manila, with plans to explore different cities before deciding where to settle. I was 63 years old, recently retired, with approximately $850,000, and a desperate hope that the Philippines would offer the fresh start I needed. When my plane landed in Manila in December 2021, I felt both excited and terrified. I had just made the most radical decision of my life, moving to a country I'd never visited, where I knew no one, based entirely on internet research and a vague hope that I could build something better than the lonely isolation I'd been experiencing in Tampa. What I didn't know was that, within weeks, I would meet a 26-year-old woman named Clarice de la Cruz, who would identify my deepest vulnerability, my desperate need to feel like a hero who could save someone and exploit it with extraordinary skill. Over 9 months, she would systematically steal $150,000 directly, trick me into co-signing loans for another $100,000, and leave me $250,000 in debt with my retirement savings destroyed. The trap would be set perfectly, appealing to my desire to be admired and needed rather than just tolerated. And I would walk into it eagerly, grateful that someone like Clarice could see value in someone like me. I spent my first month in the Philippines exploring Manila and trying to decide where to settle permanently. Manila was overwhelming, crowded, polluted, chaotic in ways I found exhausting. I visited several other cities, eventually settling on Davao City on Mindanao Island. Davao was the Philippines' 3rd largest city, but felt more manageable than Manila, with a reputation for safety, cleanliness, and a sizable expatriate community. I rented a modest condominium in Davao City and began establishing routines, learning the neighborhood, finding restaurants and grocery stores, attending informal gatherings organized by expatriate social groups. The expatriate community in Davao was friendly and helpful, mostly older American and Australian men who had retired to the Philippines for the same reasons I had. Many of these expatriates were in relationships with much younger Filipino women, and I would watch these couples with mixed feelings. Some relationships seemed obviously transactional. The women were clearly with these men for financial support rather than genuine affection. But other relationships appeared surprisingly functional, with the couples demonstrating real partnership and mutual care despite the age differences. I was lonely in Davao in ways that felt even more acute than my loneliness in Tampa. At least in Tampa, I had a familiar environment and occasional contact with my adult children. In Davao, I was a stranger who couldn't fully communicate, spending most days alone in my condo or wandering the city, observing other people's lives. In late January 2022, about 6 weeks after arriving in Davao, I joined several Facebook groups for expatriates living in the Philippines. I posted a brief introduction: retired American businessman, recently moved to Davao, interested in meeting other expatriates and learning about Filipino culture. Several people welcomed me and offered advice about living in Davao. 3 days later, I received a private message from a young Filipino woman named Clarice de la Cruz. The message was polite and respectful. "Good afternoon, Sir Tom. I saw your post in the Davao expat group. Welcome to our city. I am Clarice, a nursing student at Ateneo de Davao University. I hope you are enjoying the Philippines. If you have questions about our culture or need help with anything, please feel free to ask. God bless you." I looked at Clarice's Facebook profile. Her photos showed an attractive young woman, mid-20s, I guessed with a warm smile and modest presentation. Her posts were mostly about her nursing studies, her family, and religious activities. She didn't appear to be a bar girl or someone obviously seeking foreign men, just a normal Filipino university student. I responded politely, thanking her for the message and asking about good places to visit in Davao. Clarice replied enthusiastically, recommending several beaches, parks, and restaurants. We began exchanging messages daily, casual conversations about my adjustment to the Philippines, her nursing studies, cultural differences between America and the Philippines, our respective families. What struck me most about Clarice was her respectful manner. She always addressed me as Sir Tom, never Tom or baby, or other familiar terms I'd heard Filipino women use with foreign men. She asked thoughtful questions about my life and seemed genuinely interested in my experiences running a business and raising children. Our conversations felt mature and substantive, rather than flirty or obviously romantic. After 2 weeks of daily messaging, Clarice suggested we meet for coffee. "I think it would be nice to practice my English conversation with a native speaker," she wrote, "and I can show you some places in Davao that tourists don't usually know about. If you are comfortable meeting, of course. I understand if you prefer not to." I was comfortable meeting. We arranged to meet at a cafe near her university the following Saturday afternoon. I arrived early, nervous in ways that surprised me. This wasn't a date. Clarice was 40 years younger than me, but I still felt anxious about making a good impression. When Clarice arrived, I was struck by how young she looked in person. In her Facebook photos, she had seemed like a typical university student. In person, she looked barely old enough to be in university, small and delicate, with a shy manner and conservative dress. I felt suddenly uncomfortable about the meeting, wondering if other cafe patrons were judging me for sitting with such a young woman. But Clarice was warm and engaging. We talked for 3 hours about everything: her nursing classes, my logistics business, the differences between American and Filipino healthcare systems, her family's farm in a province outside Davao, my complicated relationships with my adult children. Clarice was sympathetic when I talked about my divorces and my estrangement from Brandon and Ashley, saying she understood how painful family conflicts could be. When we were preparing to leave, Clarice said something that touched me deeply. "Thank you for treating me with respect today, Sir Tom. Many foreign men in the Philippines see young Filipino women as servants or entertainment, but you talked to me like an equal and listened to what I was saying. That means very much to me." I felt gratified by this acknowledgement. I had been worried about appearing like a stereotype, the older foreign man seeking young Filipino women for inappropriate reasons. Clarice's comment seemed to validate that my intentions were respectful and that our friendship could be genuine rather than transactional. We began meeting regularly once or twice a week at cafes or restaurants, with Clarice showing me parts of Davao that tourists rarely visited. She introduced me to her friends occasionally, and they seemed to accept my presence naturally, treating me as Clarice's foreign friend rather than someone suspicious. Over several weeks, I found myself increasingly drawn to Clarice. She was intelligent and ambitious, studying hard to become a nurse so she could help her community. She was caring and attentive, always asking about my health and my adjustment to the Philippines. And she made me feel valued in ways I hadn't felt in years, not just tolerated but actually admired for my life experience and professional success. In March, about 2 months after we first met, Clarice did something that changed everything. We were having dinner, and Clarice took my hand across the table and said quietly, "Sir Tom, I need to tell you something. I have developed feelings for you that are more than friendship. I know you are much older than me, and maybe you think this is inappropriate, but I cannot help how I feel. You make me feel safe and respected in ways I have never felt with Filipino men my own age. I am not asking you to feel the same way. I just wanted to be honest about my feelings." My heart was pounding. This beautiful 26-year-old woman was telling me she had romantic feelings for me. It seemed impossible, like a fantasy. "Clarice, I'm 63 years old," I said carefully. "You're 26. The age difference between us is extreme. I care about you very much, but I don't want to take advantage of you or put you in a situation people would judge harshly." Clarice's eyes filled with tears. "Sir Tom, I am not a child. I am a grown woman who knows my own heart. Age is just a number. What matters is how two people treat each other, whether they care for each other, whether they want the same things in life. You are kind and generous, and you treat me with respect. That is more important to me than age." She paused, wiping her eyes. "I am not asking you to marry me or make promises you cannot keep. I'm just asking if you would be willing to see if this connection between us could become something more. If you decide it is not right, I will understand and we can remain friends. But please do not reject the possibility just because of our ages." I felt torn between caution and hope. Every rational instinct told me this was a bad idea, that the age difference was too extreme, that I was being manipulated. But the emotional part of me, the part that had been desperately lonely for years, wanted so badly to believe that Clarice's feelings were genuine, that someone could actually admire and desire me despite my age and my failed marriages. "Let me think about this," I said carefully. "I need to process what you've told me and consider whether I can do this responsibly." Clarice nodded, squeezing my hand. "Take all the time you need, Sir Tom. I am patient. I will wait for your answer." That evening, I lay in my condo thinking about Clarice's confession. I knew what other expatriates would say, that she was obviously using me, that she was performing a script designed to extract money from a lonely old man, that I was being a fool. But something about Clarice seemed different from the bar girls and obvious gold diggers I'd encountered in Davao. She was educated, she had her own life and ambitions, she had never asked me for money. Maybe, possibly, her feelings were genuine. I wanted to believe it was possible. After 2 failed marriages and years of crushing loneliness, the idea that someone could admire me and want to build a relationship with me, even someone 40 years younger, felt like salvation. And if I was wrong, if Clarice eventually revealed herself to be just another scammer, at least I would have experienced some affection and companionship, rather than spending my final years completely alone. 2 days later, I told Clarice I was willing to explore whether our connection could develop into something romantic. Her reaction was joy and relief, and she hugged me tightly, thanking me for giving her a chance. I had just made the decision that would eventually cost me $150,000 in direct theft, another $100,000 in fraudulent loans, and leave me $250,000 in debt with my retirement destroyed. But in that moment, holding Clarice and feeling her warmth and apparent affection, I believed I had finally found something worth the risk. After Clarice and I officially began our romantic relationship in March 2022, the dynamic between us shifted in ways that made me feel more valued and needed than I had felt in decades. Clarice was attentive, affectionate, and seemingly devoted to making me happy. She would visit my condo several times a week, often bringing food she had cooked or ingredients to prepare traditional Filipino meals in my kitchen. She taught me basic Tagalog phrases and helped me navigate interactions with my landlord and local service providers. She planned weekend trips to beaches and natural sites around Mindanao, creating experiences that made me feel like I was finally experiencing the Philippines authentically. Most importantly, Clarice made me feel like a hero. She would talk about my business success with obvious admiration, asking questions about how I had built Reynolds logistics and managed employees. She would tell me how impressed she was by my intelligence and work ethic, how different I was from Filipino men who, she said, often drank too much and failed to support their families responsibly. "You are the kind of man I have always dreamed of," Clarice would tell me. "Strong, responsible, caring. You worked hard your whole life and achieved success through your own efforts. That is what I respect most about you, Sir Tom. You are a self-made man." This narrative appealed powerfully to my sense of identity. I had built Reynolds Logistics from nothing through 40 years of hard work. I had supported 2 families through difficult divorces. I had earned my success, and hearing Clarice acknowledge that made me feel validated in ways my ex-wives had never provided. The financial requests began about 6 weeks into our relationship, and they were framed in ways that appealed specifically to my desire to be a rescuer rather than just a provider. In late April, Clarice came to my condo visibly upset. When I asked what was wrong, she explained that she was in danger of failing her nursing program because she couldn't pay tuition for the current semester. "My family promised to send money," Clarice explained, crying. "But my father's farm had a bad harvest this year, and they do not have enough. I have worked so hard in my studies, Sir Tom. I am only 1 year from graduation. But if I cannot pay 25,000 pesos, about $500 by next week, I will be removed from the program. I will lose everything I have worked for." I immediately offered to pay the tuition. $500 was nothing to me, and Clarice's education was clearly important. "You cannot lose your dream because of temporary financial problems," I said. "I'll cover the tuition. When you graduate and have a good nursing job, you can repay me if you want. But right now, your education is the priority." Clarice was overwhelmed with gratitude. She hugged me tightly, telling me I was the most wonderful man she had ever known, that she didn't know how she had been lucky enough to find me. The next day, I transferred the money to the account she provided for the university payment. Over the next 3 months, there were 7 more tuition payments each time, between $400 and $800, each time with similar stories about family financial problems preventing Clarice from paying herself. By July 2022, I had paid approximately $5,000 in tuition fees. What I didn't know was that Clarice was not enrolled in nursing school at all. The tuition payments went directly to her personal accounts, and the official-looking receipts she showed me were forgeries created by associates who specialized in producing fake university documents. Clarice had identified my desire to feel like a rescuer who was enabling someone's education, and she was exploiting it systematically. But the tuition scam was small compared to what came next. In August 2022, Clarice told me about a serious family crisis. Her father's farm in the province was about to be foreclosed because of accumulated debts. The family owed $40,000 to a rural bank, and if they couldn't pay within a month, they would lose the land that had been in Clarice's family for 3 generations. "My father is devastated," Clarice said, crying. "This farm is our family's heritage. My grandparents built our life on this land. If we lose it, my parents will have nothing. They are too old to start over somewhere else. I am trying to help them, but I am just a student with no money. I do not know what to do." She paused, looking at me with desperate hope. "I know this is asking too much, Sir Tom, but is there any way you could loan my family the money to save the farm? They would repay you after the next harvest. I promise they are good people who pay their debts. They just need help during this difficult time." I felt sick hearing about Clarice's family crisis. These were good people who had worked hard their whole lives, now facing the loss of everything because of circumstances beyond their control. And I had the money to help them. $40,000 was significant, but it wouldn't devastate my savings. And if it could save Clarice's family farm, wasn't that a worthy use of my resources? "I'll loan your family the money," I said. "Not as a business transaction, but as help for people I care about. When they can repay me, fine. If they can't, I'm not going to take their farm. Consider it a gift to help your family during a crisis." Clarice was overcome with emotion. She called her parents via video call right then, and I watched an emotional conversation in Tagalog where Clarice's parents were crying and thanking me repeatedly. Even though I couldn't understand their words, their gratitude seemed genuine and deeply felt. Over the next week, I transferred $40,000 in installments to the bank account Clarice provided for paying off her family's farm debt. She showed me documents entirely in Tagalog, supposedly confirming that the debt had been paid and the farm was secure. What I didn't know was that Clarice's family I had spoken with via video call were actors from her network, playing roles specifically designed to make the scam seem legitimate. The farm debt was complete fiction. The $40,000 had been immediately distributed among Clarice and her handlers, with me receiving fake documents to prevent questioning the expenditure. In September, Clarice told me about her dream of opening a small community clinic after graduation. She wanted to serve rural areas where access to healthcare was limited, providing basic medical services to people who couldn't afford to travel to cities for treatment. "I have been thinking about this for years," Clarice explained enthusiastically. "My nursing education is teaching me clinical skills, but what I really want is to bring healthcare to underserved communities. If I could open a small clinic in a rural area, I could provide basic healthcare, prenatal care, immunizations, health education. I could make a real difference in people's lives." Clarice showed me detailed business plans she had supposedly been working on. She had identified a location in a rural municipality, researched equipment and supply costs, and projected operating expenses. The presentation was professional and thoughtful, and I was impressed by the vision and commitment Clarice was demonstrating. "The startup cost would be about $85,000, Clarice continued. "That covers the building lease, medical equipment, supplies, licensing, and operating capital for the first year, while the clinic establishes itself and builds a patient base. It is a lot of money, I know. But this is my life's dream, Sir Tom. I want to help people who have no other options for healthcare." I was moved by Clarice's vision and her commitment to serving her community. This wasn't about personal gain. She wanted to use her nursing skills to help poor people who desperately needed healthcare access, and I had the resources to make this happen. $85,000 was substantial, but it was an investment in something genuinely meaningful, helping Clarice achieve her dream while providing healthcare to underserved Filipinos. "I want to help you do this," I said. "Let's structure it as a partnership. I'll provide the capital, and you'll manage the operations. We'll be equal partners sharing in whatever profits the clinic generates. And more importantly, we'll be helping people who need it." Clarice was thrilled. We worked with a lawyer who helped us create business partnership documents. I would fund the startup, and Clarice would manage daily operations. We would share ownership and profits equally. The lawyer prepared contracts establishing this arrangement and supposedly protecting my investment. In October 2022, I transferred $85,000 to the business account Clarice had established for the clinic venture. It was by far the largest single expense I had made since moving to the Philippines, but I felt confident about the investment because we had proper legal structure and because Clarice's vision for serving her community seemed genuine and admirable. Over the next several weeks, Clarice updated me regularly on the clinic's progress. The building was being renovated. Medical equipment had been ordered from suppliers in Manila. She was hiring nurses and developing treatment protocols. She showed me photographs of the renovation work and receipts for various expenses. I visited the supposed clinic location once, and Clarice explained that the building was locked because of construction, and it wasn't safe for me to go inside yet. "I want you to see it when it is clean and properly set up," she said. "Right now, it is just construction mess. Be patient, Sir Tom. In a few more weeks, you can see the completed clinic and meet all the staff." But November came and went, and the clinic still hadn't opened. Clarice had increasingly elaborate explanations, licensing delays from provincial health authorities, supplier problems with medical equipment, construction complications requiring additional work. Each delay seemed plausible, and Clarice appeared frustrated by the setbacks, so I tried to be patient and supportive. By December 2022, I had sent Clarice a total of approximately $130,000, $5,000 for tuition, $40,000 for her family's farm debt, and $85,000 for the clinic. My savings had declined from $850,000 to about $700,000, but I still felt reasonably secure financially. And more importantly, I felt like I was building something meaningful, helping Clarice achieve her dreams while contributing to healthcare access for underserved Filipinos. What I didn't understand was that none of it was real. The university enrollment, the family farm crisis, the community clinic, all elaborate fictions designed to extract maximum money from a lonely 65-year-old American who desperately needed to feel like a hero rescuing someone rather than just another foolish old man being used for his money. In January 2023, about a year after I had first met Clarice, she told me we had a serious problem with the clinic. The renovation costs had exceeded our budget significantly because of unexpected structural issues with the building. We needed an additional $20,000 to complete the work, or everything we had already invested would be wasted. "I feel terrible asking you for more money," Clarice said, visibly distressed. "You have already been so generous. But if we cannot finish the renovation, the clinic cannot open. All the equipment we purchased, all the staff we hired, all the work we have done, it will all be for nothing. We will lose everything we invested." I was frustrated by the continued escalation of costs, but abandoning the project now seemed worse than providing additional funding. I transferred another $20,000, bringing my total investment in Clarice's various needs to $150,000. By this point, my savings had declined to about $680,000, still substantial, but the rapid depletion was making me anxious. I told Clarice there could be no more unexpected expenses, that we needed to complete the clinic with existing funds or accept that the project was not viable. Clarice assured me the clinic would open within weeks and would begin generating revenue that would make us financially independent. "You have invested so much in my dreams and my family," she said. "I promise I will make you proud. This clinic will succeed, and we will help so many people together." Then, in February, Clarice introduced a new element that would ultimately destroy me financially. She explained that the clinic needed an official business loan to establish credit history and demonstrate financial stability to provincial health authorities. She had been approved for a loan of $100,000 from a Filipino bank, but the bank required a co-signer with international financial credentials. "Would you be willing to co-sign this loan as my business partner?" Clarice asked. "I will handle all the payments from the clinic's revenue once we open. You would not need to pay anything yourself. The bank just requires a co-signer to approve the loan, and your American financial history makes you an ideal co-signer." I was hesitant about co-signing a loan. I understood the risks. If Clarice failed to make payments, I would be legally responsible for the debt. But Clarice seemed insulted by my hesitation. "Do you not trust me?" she asked, hurt. "After everything we have built together, you think I would take out a loan and not pay it? I am not trying to steal from you, Sir Tom. I am trying to build a legitimate business that will serve our community and generate income for both of us. If you do not trust me enough to co-sign a business loan, then maybe we do not have the partnership I thought we had." Her reaction made me feel guilty for being suspicious. Clarice had been nothing but devoted and hardworking. She was using all the money I had given her for legitimate purposes: her education, her family's survival, building a healthcare facility. My doubt felt like a betrayal of everything we had built together. "I trust you," I said, relenting. "I'm sorry for questioning you. Of course I'll co-sign the loan. Let's set up the meeting with the bank." That decision, agreeing to co-sign a loan for someone I had known for less than a year, would be the final catastrophic mistake that left me in devastating debt. We went to the bank in Davao City in mid-February. The bank officer explained the loan terms: $100,000, 5-year repayment period, 12% annual interest. The loan would be in Clarice's name as the primary borrower, with me as co-signer guaranteeing repayment if she defaulted. The officer also mentioned something that should have alarmed me, but which I rationalized away. The primary borrower will have full access to withdraw funds from the loan account, he explained. As co-signer, you guarantee repayment but do not have withdrawal authority unless specifically granted by the primary borrower. This arrangement seemed backwards to me. If I was guaranteeing repayment, shouldn't I have some control over how the money was used? But Clarice explained that this was standard for business loans in the Philippines. The business operator had withdrawal authority, while investors provided capital and credit guarantees. I signed the documents, and with that signature, I had just legally committed myself to repaying $100,000 if Clarice defaulted, while giving her unrestricted access to withdraw those funds without my knowledge or approval. Over the next 2 weeks, Clarice continued updating me on the clinic's progress. The renovation was finally complete. The medical equipment had been installed. They were conducting final inspections before the official opening. Everything was falling into place. Then, in early March, Clarice told me she needed to travel to her family's farm in the province to help with the harvest. She would be gone for about a week. I offered to come with her, but she said her family's village was very remote and uncomfortable for foreigners, and she would be working in the fields rather than having time to spend with me anyway. Clarice left on a Thursday morning, sending me messages throughout the day about her journey to the province. On Friday, she sent a photo of herself with her parents at the farm. On Saturday, she sent messages about helping with the harvest and how exhausting but fulfilling the work was. But Sunday came with no messages. Monday arrived, and Clarice's phone went straight to voicemail. Tuesday, I tried messaging on Facebook and WhatsApp, no responses. By Wednesday, I was seriously concerned. Had something happened to Clarice? Was there an emergency at the farm? On Thursday, exactly 1 week after Clarice had left for the province, I received a phone call from the bank where we had established the business loan. The officer who had processed our loan wanted me to come to the bank immediately to discuss urgent matters regarding the account. I felt a wave of dread as I walked into the bank. Something was very wrong. The officer sat me down and explained the situation with obvious discomfort. "Sir Tom, I need to inform you that Miss Clarice Dela Cruz has made several large withdrawals from the loan account over the past week. The total amount withdrawn is $150,000. Are you aware of these transactions? $150,000? The loan had been for $100,000. How could she have withdrawn $150,000? There must be some mistake," I said, my voice weak. "The loan was only for $100,000. The officer pulled up account records on his computer. The loan was for $100,000. However, Miss Dela Cruz used power of attorney documents signed by you to access an additional line of credit attached to your American bank account. She has withdrawn funds from both sources, totaling $150,000. I felt like I was going to vomit. I never gave her power of attorney over my American bank account. I never signed documents authorizing that. The officer showed me photocopies of documents with my signature, granting Clarice power of attorney and authorization to access credit lines in my name. The signature looked like mine. I tried to remember, had Clarice brought me documents to sign related to the business? There had been so many papers related to the clinic, most in Tagalog or English I couldn't fully understand. Had she slipped power of attorney documents into that stack? "These signatures are forged," I said desperately, even though I knew they looked authentic. "I never signed these documents. This is fraud." The officer's expression was sympathetic but resigned. "Sir, I warned you about this possibility when you came to sign the loan. Many foreign nationals are defrauded this way by Filipino partners. You will need to report this to the police and work with your American bank to dispute the unauthorized access. But I must inform you that regardless of how the withdrawals occurred, you are legally responsible for repaying the business loan plus any interest that accumulates. The loan was properly executed, and you are the co-signer. I sat there trying to comprehend what had happened. Clarice had disappeared with $150,000. I was legally responsible for a $100,000 loan that would accumulate interest. My American bank accounts had been accessed fraudulently, meaning I might be liable for those charges as well. I called Clarice's phone, repeatedly disconnected. I checked Facebook, WhatsApp, all her social media, everything had been deleted or blocked. I tried to find the clinic location she had shown me. Photographs of it was a vacant lot with no evidence any construction or business had ever been attempted there. Everything about Clarice, her nursing education, her family farm, her community clinic dream had been complete fiction. The woman I had loved and trusted for over a year had been systematically stealing from me the entire time, and I had been too desperate to be a hero, too proud of being the rescuer, to recognize obvious warning signs. After discovering the bank fraud, I spent several days in a state of shock, trying to process the scale of what had happened. I had transferred $150,000 directly to Clarice over the course of our relationship. I was legally liable for a $100,000 business loan, and preliminary investigations suggested my American bank accounts had been accessed for fraudulent charges totaling approximately $50,000. The total damage was approximately $300,000. My retirement savings had been reduced from $850,000 to about $550,000 before accounting for the debt I now owed. I filed police reports in both Davao City and with American authorities. The Filipino police were sympathetic but not encouraging. The officer taking my report explained that these types of romance investment scams were common and very difficult to prosecute. You gave money voluntarily to your girlfriend, the officer explained. Legally, those are gifts, not theft. The business loan was properly executed with your signature as co-signer, so you are liable for that debt. The power of attorney documents have signatures that appear to be yours, which makes proving forgery very difficult. Even if we could prove fraud, Miss Dela Cruz has likely already left Davao and distributed the money through her network where we cannot trace it. The officer said they would investigate, but I should not expect to recover my money. The best I could hope for was preventing Clarice from victimizing others if they could locate and arrest her. My American bank was similarly unhelpful. They reviewed the fraudulent transactions and concluded that because I had traveled to the Philippines and had been in a relationship with someone there, it was possible I had voluntarily provided access to my accounts. The power of attorney documents with signatures resembling mine complicated their fraud investigation. They agreed to investigate but warned that recovering funds would be unlikely. I also hired a Filipino lawyer to help me understand my legal position. Her assessment was devastating. The business loan I had co-signed was legally binding, meaning I was required to make monthly payments of approximately $2,300 for 5 years. If I defaulted, the bank could pursue collection through both Filipino and American courts, since I was an American citizen with assets in both countries. The direct transfers I had made to Clarice, totaling $150,000, were legally considered gifts because I had sent the money voluntarily to someone I was in a romantic relationship with. Proving that Clarice had obtained this money through fraud would require demonstrating that she had false pretenses from the beginning, which would be extremely difficult given that our relationship had appeared genuine to witnesses. Your best option is probably to negotiate with the bank to settle the loan for less than the full amount, the lawyer advised. Explain that you were defrauded and cannot afford to repay the full loan. They may agree to settle for 60 or 70 cents on the dollar, but you will still owe tens of thousands of dollars, and your credit will be destroyed. I sat in my condo trying to understand how my life had collapsed so completely. I had come to the Philippines with $850,000, confident I could retire comfortably and maybe find some companionship. Less than 15 months later, I was hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, my savings cut nearly in half, facing years of loan payments I could barely afford. The psychological damage was somehow worse than the financial devastation. I had believed Clarice genuinely cared about me, that I had finally found someone who valued me for who I was, rather than just tolerating me. Discovering that every affectionate moment had been calculated performance, that she had been studying me to identify the best ways to extract money, left me feeling hollowed out emotionally. I replayed every interaction with Clarice in my mind, looking for signs I had missed, and the signs had been there from the beginning. The way she positioned herself as the innocent dream girl who valued character over money, the video calls with her family that had seemed slightly performed, the constant financial crises that always required exactly the amount I could afford to give, the elaborate business plans that always had reasons why I couldn't verify them directly. But I had wanted so desperately to believe I was rescuing someone, that I was the hero in Clarice's story, that I had rationalized away every warning sign. Other expatriates had tried to caution me about sending money to a girlfriend I had only known for a few months, but I had dismissed them as cynical and jealous, convinced my relationship was different. I had two choices: stay in the Philippines trying to manage the debt, or return to America and face the financial consequences there. Staying in the Philippines would mean accepting a drastically reduced standard of living while making loan payments I could barely afford. Returning to America would mean giving up on the Philippines retirement dream and starting over at 66 with about half the savings I had planned on. I decided to return to America. I couldn't afford to maintain my Davao condominium while paying loan obligations. I sold what furniture I had purchased, consolidated what I could carry, and in May 2023 boarded a flight back to Tampa. When my plane took off from Davao, I felt like a complete failure. I had spent 15 months in the Philippines and accomplished nothing except losing $300,000 to a woman who had been using me the entire time. The retirement dream had been destroyed, replaced by debt and humiliation. I'm now 66 years old, back in Tampa, Florida, living in a small one-bedroom apartment and working part-time at a logistics consulting firm to supplement my drastically reduced retirement income. I have approximately $550,000 remaining from my original $850,000, and I owe approximately $100,000 in remaining debt from the fraudulent loan that I'm paying off at $2,300 per month. After loan payments and living expenses, I'm barely surviving on what remains of my retirement savings. The comfortable retirement I had planned has been replaced by careful budgeting and constant anxiety about unexpected expenses that could devastate my precarious financial situation. The financial damage, while severe, is not the worst consequence of what Clarice did to me. The worst damage is understanding that my desperate need to feel like a hero made me vulnerable to manipulation so obvious that everyone around me recognized it except me. I wanted to rescue Clarice from poverty, from lack of educational opportunities, from limited healthcare access in rural Philippines. I wanted to be the generous American who swooped in and saved the day, proving I was valuable and worthy of admiration. That savior complex made me blind to obvious fraud. I wanted to rescue her, but she was the one who destroyed me. I tell the few people who ask about my time in the Philippines, every time I sent Clarice money, I felt like I was being a good man, a generous man, a man who used his resources to help others. In reality, I was funding a professional criminal's lifestyle while she laughed at my gullibility. I've learned that Clarice, or whoever she really was, is reportedly still operating in the Philippines, running similar scams on other older foreign men. A fraud investigator I consulted told me she's likely part of an organized romance investment ring that has been linked to dozens of victims over several years, with estimated total losses exceeding $3 million. These networks are extremely sophisticated, the investigator explained. They create entire fictional lives for their operatives, fake universities, fake families, fake business ventures. They use psychology and emotional manipulation rather than obvious deception. Victims hand over money voluntarily because they believe they're helping someone they love rather than being robbed. The investigator said victims like me are specifically targeted because we have identifiable vulnerabilities. I was recently retired with substantial savings. I was lonely after 2 failed marriages. I was eager to prove I could still be valuable to someone. Clarice studied my Facebook profile before ever messaging me and crafted her approach specifically for my psychological vulnerabilities. She told you she was a nursing student because you respect education and professional ambition, the investigator explained. She created the family farm crisis because you value family and hard work. She designed the community clinic scam because you want to be seen as generous and helpful. Every element of her performance was calculated to appeal to your specific need to be a rescuer. My relationship with my adult children remains distant. Brandon and Ashley reached out after learning about the scam, but their reactions were more frustration than sympathy. "How could you give $300,000 to someone you barely knew?" Ashley asked during a painful phone call. "Why didn't you talk to us before making these decisions?" I didn't have a good answer. I had been so desperate to prove I could find happiness in retirement that I had ignored every cautious voice, including my own occasional doubts. I sometimes think about the bank officer in Davao who tried to warn me before I signed the loan documents. He had seen this exact situation dozens of times, older foreign men being defrauded by younger Filipina partners. He tried to tell me, and I dismissed his concerns because I believed my situation was different. My relationship was genuine. That pride, the conviction that I was too smart and too experienced to be scammed, made me the perfect victim. Clarice didn't target stupid people. She targeted proud people who were desperate to believe they had found something real. I'm working part-time at 66, not because I want to, but because I have to. The retirement I spent 40 years building toward has been replaced by financial survival mode. I'll be making loan payments until I'm 71, and by then my retirement savings will be largely exhausted. I came to the Philippines believing I could find love and meaning in my retirement years. Instead, I found a professional criminal who identified my deepest vulnerability, my need to feel like a hero, and exploited it with extraordinary skill. She destroyed me financially while making me believe I was the most generous, wonderful man she had ever known. The truly devastating part is that even now, even knowing intellectually that everything was fake, part of me still wants to believe some of it was real. Part of me wants to believe that Clarice actually admired my work ethic, actually appreciated my generosity, actually felt something genuine mixed in with the calculated manipulation. But I know that's not true. Every word, every tear, every expression of gratitude was performance designed to extract maximum money before she disappeared. I was never her hero. I was her target, carefully selected and systematically destroyed. From millionaire to nothing. That's my story. And the woman responsible is probably running the same scam right now on another lonely man who desperately wants to believe someone sees value in him. If this story has opened your eyes to how romance investment scams destroy retirees in the Philippines, please subscribe to this channel. Tom Reynolds' experience represents thousands of older men who lose their life savings to much younger partners who expertly exploit the savior complex, the desperate need to be a hero who rescues someone. These scams succeed because victims want so badly to feel admired and needed that they ignore obvious warning signs. Share this story with anyone considering sending money to romantic partners abroad, and remember, if someone constantly needs rescuing, ask yourself whether you're building a relationship or funding a professional criminal's lifestyle. Real love does not require you to destroy yourself financially to prove your generosity. Thank you for watching, and please protect yourself and those you care about.